Welcome to episode 9 of People Are the Answer. I truly believe that people are the only answer to the world's many problems. I'm Jeffrey M. Zucker, a serial entrepreneur here to learn how innovators are creating outsized, transformational social impact. Today's episode features my friend Mo Brown. To put it simply, Mo is a winner in life despite the odds being stacked against him. He's used the hardships he's experienced as fuel to do incredible work. He has been a D1 college football player, U.S. congressional candidate, process consultant, and more. I don't want to offend any of my previous guests, but this might be the best episode yet. Mo and I discuss why listening is so important, his football career as a South Carolina Gamecock, working for the South Carolina Department of Commerce, running for Congress, his new consulting firm, and much more. Here is Mo Brown on People Are the Answer. Mo, thanks so much for joining me on People Are the Answer.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to having a great conversation.
Likewise, it's always good to chat, and I'm excited to get to do that with other people listening in, that we'll get to learn some more about you. And I think just to provide some background for the people listening, you and I met when I was at a fundraising event years ago when I was lobbying for medical cannabis in South Carolina, which unfortunately we're not done with that yet. And, just kind of hit it off and have stayed in touch over the years.
Yeah, exactly, man. And it's a cool thing about South Carolina, our little small state, the circle of influence. You can get around it pretty easily. Just showing up to the right event, and it was great that we was able to meet each other and have like-minded and like minds in the sense that we want to push the state forward in a productive way. And I think we circled around that or gravitated towards that, I should say, and stayed in contact ever since. So it's been good.
Yeah, agreed. So, love it if you could just start off by, telling the listeners kind of who you are, what your role is, and where you are.
Yeah. So name is actually Maricus Brown, which my mom would get on to me if I didn't say that. And I go by Mo Brown for the most part. And I'm from a little small town in the Anderson County called Belton, South Carolina. Grew up there for the most part, spent time in the upstate, moving around. My mom, she had us young, and so it was a really we was raised by the village mentality. Like as saying she had me young, she had me at 16, my oldest brother at 14, two more by the age of 20. So spend time with my granny, spend time with my aunt, my uncle. Growing up a number of years, and before I moved back in with my mom when I was 12 or 13 for good, and finished out my time at Westside High School. My current role, I am the managing consultant for my consultant firm called Process First Consulting, and it's a general business consulting firm, dealing with brand and culture enhancement, as well as strategic business development and communications. And got a good team around me, and we're trying to grow the company and provide great strategies and great value to our clients. And what motivates me is helping people, helping as many people as I possibly can in the process of becoming the best person that I can be. And I truly believe that is our greatest burden, to understand our gifts, but not only understand them, maximize them, um, and do so with the understanding of that someone else is dependent on you to be able to give that to them as they're going through that same process. So, with that understanding, it motivates me to wake up and continue to push the gifts out that I have, to affect the world for the better.
Awesome. It's really cool to hear some of those details, and we can dig in some more to what you're up to with Process First later. But you talked about growing up in Belton and your mom having you young. Can you dig a little bit more into how that made you who you are?
Oh man, it was everything, and I mean, even beyond my mom, just the community, where I grew up at Belt, South Carolina, not to get into politics, but just to give folks an example. I mean, it was the heart of Trump country. It's oh, upstate, red, believe Bible Belt. But at the end of the day, whatever perception you may have of it, it's just really good, decent people that respect people that are good, decent people that goes about their lives being respectable, honorable, being a helping hand, being considerate, being empathetic. Those terms was really fed into me as a child. Again, for everyone in my community, from my teachers, coaches, especially my family, who was deep into Christianity, and that's where our base and foundation came from. And so, that's one side of it. The other side of it is being the struggles of growing up in pretty much not a well-off state where every meal was, you didn't know what it was. It could have been anything from ramen noodles to hamburger helper. If you had hamburger helper, that was a great night. You was excited about that. But we always had something to eat. We wasn't in a position where the lights was getting cut off, but where you're laying your head at could be, again, any one relative um, at a time. But love was always present. Accountability was always present. The desire that you was greater than what your situation or circumstance dictated was always present, and because of that, we persevered as a family to do better than what was probably predicted.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear how your family came together to support you and your siblings. And I know it wasn't easy. And I know one thing that you said, and we'll talk about your political career in a little bit, but I recalled from the first video you released when you were running for Congress, you talked about being destined to fail, where you came from and overcoming that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really powerful. Maybe you could elaborate a little.
Yeah, I mean, statistically, the last census had Belton, South Carolina as the poorest town, city in the state from a per capita standpoint of just wealth. So those challenges, coupled with having teenage parents, my dad, he was a teenager as well when I was birthed, and the lack of opportunity or not opportunity rich climate that I grew up in. Um, you know, Statistics would say that I was destined not to be successful in life. Um, but again, just my family and my community, like no, those statistics didn't matter to us. It was again just going back to being a disciplined, decent person that showed respect to your elders, and expectations of you was just simply that expectation. And when that was understood by the community and your family and the people who knew your family, there was a commitment from all to adhere to that. And because I saw that, respected it myself, I was able to utilize what gifts I had, and from an athleticism standpoint, but most importantly, from an academic standpoint, being challenged by my parents as well as my aunt, uncle, and granny to excel in that department. And the combination of which has led to the success I've attained to this point. So being destined to fail was what the statistics said, but we all have choices to maximize the hand that we're dealt. That was the road that I took.
I again, think it echoes how important having a really supportive, incredible family can be
Mhm.
to changing the expected outcomes. And one topic I've covered a fair amount on some of these episodes is criminal justice system and the reform that's needed. I know that your family came in contact with the criminal justice system, and I know that you agree with me that it needs reform. Anything you want to say on that topic?
Yeah, man, it's very tough, right? Because everybody have their deep emotions about how they feel, and how they expect things to flow and what justice is. But at the purest form of it, justice is blind. And so when the litmus test is performed, it can't have prejudice towards it. And as simple as that. And it starts on the individual level. Each one of those cops, each person that's in a position of power, understanding exactly the power that they wield. And it's not a matter of being able to flex it. It's actually a matter of being able to keep it concealed unless necessary otherwise. Like, and so I think at the baseline, we gotta go and talk about the culture, what it means to have justice in this country, and the individual responsibility that we have to each other to make sure that justice is indeed blind. And I think if we focus on that and get away from all the other politics that comes along with it, we're gonna have a really good chance of getting it right because transparency, consistency becomes the point, and then all those corrupt other intentions that come along with it will become less and less and less to or non-existent for the most part. So that's how I see it. We got to get the communication correct on the criminal justice side because it's too much at stake. It's too many lost lives. There's too many families affected. The indirect cost is too much, and so I hope and I really do believe that there's a group of leaders that's our age that's looking at all of these things that have been affected, old enough to understand how it once was, young enough to understand how it is now, and still wise enough to be able to blend that into figuring out how we're taking all these technology and weapons that we have that could be for good, that oftentimes is misused for bad, and trying to make sense of it. And I think that's ultimately what we need in the criminal justice system. But I think we also got to look at society as a whole and take a very similar approach.
Yeah, I agree that those perspectives need to apply to society as a whole, and I think you put it really well. And it was kind of poetic in a way that we had sirens in the background
Right,
noise. I want the
right.
listeners to know we didn't add those in.
We did not. We did not. That's crazy. That really is.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that perspective, and hopefully we're on the path to improving things on that front in our country and in the world.
And,
Uh,
and if I could add, because I think it's important, Senator Scott is leading that effort here out of South Carolina on a national level with him and Senator Booker, trying to find compromise. And if I could say anything, I know it's tough. I know it's difficult. And I think the last I've seen of it, the talks was, had come to a head. But it is so important for them to continue that conversation and finding where the rubber hits the road on that, because that's the leadership that's needed in order to start putting trust back into our governmental system to where we can work across the line to common sense solutions that's going to benefit the whole country. So I take my hand off to Senator Scott and the political world that Democrats aren't supposed to do that. I take my hat off to him for trying, but at the same time, the challenge is let's figure it out. Let's do it. Let's do it.
yeah, it's good to see that those conversations are happening. We live in such a divided world, and anybody in that position of power that's willing to try to make issues more bipartisan and humane is certainly appreciated.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you briefly mentioned how your athleticism came into play growing up. For those that don't know, you played D1 football for the University of South Carolina. Can you talk about how football was part of your life growing up?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, football was so important. I remember the first year I went out to try to play. I was 7. My brother was 9, and I didn't get to play that year because we didn't have enough money to buy his pads and my pads. So I had to wait a year out. And so I played basketball. Basketball was my first love. I wanted to be Michael Jordan. We sucked and I cried literally after every game, like boo-hoo cried. It was pretty terrible. But the following year I got to play and got to choose jersey number 22. I was a big Cowboys fan, and Coach King, who's the head coach for the 8 and under football team, he was just a great man. The basics of being able to coexist with other people for the objective of winning was those first fundamentals was instilled by him. And the cool thing I learned from Coach King, and it's gonna stay with me the rest of my whole life, was the respect that you had for your equipment. You always had your helmet up. You always had your shoulder pads over it. We didn't sit on our butt. We always took a knee if we was taking a breath. The fundamentals of just carrying the rocks and the thoughtfulness of what you're supposed to do when you play the game um, really bled into the rest of my life. Those things learning at a very early age, and it reflected my approach to football therein after. And I ended up finding myself in leadership positions on every team that I was in because of those fundamentals. And I'm like, we're going to play this game. We're going to respect this game. If we respect this game, the game will give you back what you put into it. And so, football in itself reflects life, in that you got people coming from all over, and we're trying to win at life. And everyone has a story. Everyone's going to pull different, but if we all pulling towards the same goal, with the intent that my play is going to help your play, we're going to have a chance. So football itself has been one of the great teachers in my life, and reflects who I am to a large degree because of the experience of playing it. Being able to do it on the D1 level on a Steve Spurrier, who was a master at his craft. And me and my good friend Freddie Brown, was just talking about the lessons that he taught, even on a subconscious level, and how that has prepared us to be successful men. It goes really deep. And so I'm so appreciative of football. And if anyone can play it, I recommend it. Protect yourself, obviously, make the right decision for your children, but it's a great sport without question.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see kind of how it helped you on the path that you were trying to get on in life. And you were really fortunate to have that great coach. I know not every kid that plays is fortunate to have somebody thoughtful in that position.
Right. Right. I mean, it made a world of a difference. And again, as you grow older, going through it, you didn't feel the same way. But, thinking about, the attention to detail, the accountability that you was held to. I mean, if you had a route that was ran at 12 yards and you ran that route at 10 yards, it was a problem. Or why didn't you run that route at 12 yards? Because there was a reason you run it at 12 yards, because you run it at 10 yards, it takes the timing of the play, which means that their hole is not there. And if the hole is not there, you're not going to be open, and it can go down to the hill from there, where problems could be interceptions. You have to tuck it, go to the next read, because you didn't do your job by running it 12 yards. So it was very detailed. And coming from high school to college and playing in front of 80,000 with the millions that comes associated with it from a financial standpoint, not to mention the emotional responsibility that comes along with it. You drop a ball in front of 80,000 people. It ain't you just dropping the ball. It's, oh, that could have won the game. Weekend's affected. The whole week is affected. Whole year is affected by one single play, one moment in time. So having a head coach like Steve Spurrier that could articulate and demand the respect for that reality in a way that made you a better football player, you didn't always feel going through it, but now looking back at it, you're so grateful for it.
I'm sure that was an incredible experience, and I definitely don't want to make the whole episode about football, but I do have a couple more questions. So you talked about the millions of dollars associated with college sports. How do you feel about the new name and likeness opportunities for college athletes?
I think it was past due. I think we are still trying to figure out what it means for college athletics. I mean, there's a beauty in the way college athletics set up that do create the camaraderie that reflects the college experience, that the brotherhood and the bonds that you grow literally take you for the rest of your life. You're going to raise families together. You're going to be godparents, and find your wives or your husbands or whatever that it may be. as you go through that process for a lot of people. Um, so all that is important as you're going through the college experience. And so when you start inserting money into it, how that's going to affect that when someone is maybe making six figures, them showing up to practice, not showing up to practice, them being integrated in that same struggle that everyone is going through, that could cause some issues that I think is going to have to be played out and take some of the parity away from college athletics that is important beyond just the financial gain. And so I do think, over the course of the next couple of years, there's going to be a reality to the actual financial gain for these student athletes. And I don't think it's going to be as great as intended. And so I think there's going to have to be some more structure around how these student athletes are actually getting compensated on a more long-term basis, and figuring out that structure is going to be for our leaders to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are some really good points. It's a topic I'm sure we could talk about for a really long time, but overall, I think it's good that the students are starting to get some sort of compensation, but it's really going to be worked out with experience over time, and there's going to be a lot more tweaks to come.
For sure, for sure.
So being a D1 athlete, at a school in the South, how was that? Do you feel that you were treated differently because you were an athlete, for better or worse?
That's a good question. Definitely was treated differently, but I don't know if it's from the aspect that most people think about, like we got this good life. It's not. It's a certain level of expectations that come along with it. I was just expressing earlier. The reality of that deals with some of the mental issues. I've got teammates that either done committed suicide or attempted suicide, at the fate of this game and the pressure that comes along with it, coming from nothing, coming from literally, the bottom of the barrel to having the opportunity to play in the SEC, which essentially translate to changing the plight of your family and community by playing here. Like that's a lot that comes with that. And so yes, you are treated differently. And as long as you're producing, there's a treatment that comes along with that. But if you're not producing, the expectations that come with you too, especially being stars on a high school level, that's tough too. And so there's both sides of that. That one side get magnified, and the other side is starting to get more attention around. So it's definitely a different treatment. But at the end of the day, that's what separates the good from the bad, or I shouldn't say the bad or the less fortunate, is how can you handle that, and how then you can pivot what was learned to successful career beyond the field. And schools are doing a better job of coaching up and teaching these student athletes beyond the field to translate those skills learned on the field. But we still got a ways to go. We still got a ways to go.
And I think that you have done a really good job translating those lessons from the field and to off the field. And I'll go into that in a second, but I know there's a high school record that you still hold, and I just wanted to just check in on that and
Yeah,
see where that
yeah.
stands.
Yeah, man. In 2004, myself, my brother, Antonio Brown, Martez, and as well as Dennis Martin, we call him Juke, and then Brandon Brown, who had no relation to my brother and I. We set a high school national record in the shuttle hurdle relay, which is not run all that much because you got to have four hurdlers that actually is on one team to run it. But we set that record, that high school record, back in 2004 of a time of 56:32, and that currently still stands, as far as I know, as a high school national record. So a little
Awesome.
bit of trivia that we're proud of.
Well, that sounds like a hard one to break. Hopefully it'll stick for a while, but
right. At least get to the 20-year mark. We want to get to the 20-year mark. That'll be pretty cool. We're at 17, I think, right now.
nice. Well, wishing you guys luck with that, and going back to transitioning the lessons learned on the field to off the field. Um, Talk about what you did after college football, whether you thought about the pros and where you took your work experience?
Yeah, man. I mean, definitely, I was, trying to make the pros. I wasn't an All American, but I wasn't a scrub either. I put up respectable numbers, had some pretty big games against really good teams, and was able to perform. So at the bare minimum, the hope was to at least get into camp and show that I was able to do that. But the reality of it was that I never got that opportunity to get a tryout, which is still a little bit beyond me. But it is what it is, and that's what the universe saw fit. Um, the other side of it being, the reality and upbringing and the importance of education was that as good as I thought I was or might have wanted to be, um, one play could end it. And so focusing on getting a great education while at this great university and then too with this great business school that we had, um, I was dedicated to put just as much energy into that as I was in trying to make it happen on the football field. And thank God that I did, getting a degree in finance and marketing and a minor in sports management. Um, that blend really set me up to be able to translate those skills I learned on the football field, have the practical know-how for going through one of the best business schools in the country to land a job with um, South Carolina Department of Commerce as a project manager, which was really, really cool and really, really rare for someone that young to be in such a position of responsibility. And so, um, you know, working for then Joe Taylor, who was the secretary who actually offered me the job a couple times, which I turned down. And he finally asked me to be an intern because I was trying to play football. I wasn't trying to work. Putting on a tie, sitting behind a desk, like, yeah, miss me with that. Uh, but he offered me $14 to be an intern, and I was broke at that point. And I was like, yeah, I take those 14 bucks, work half the day, work out the other half. And as he was about to transition out, he had a real frank conversation with me, told me that he believed I should hire on. And this was like around December. I wasn't on a team or anything like that. And I made the decision to and became an official project manager at that point. And then from there, I was exposed to the highest level of government, highest level of education, highest level of business, and the goal to attract companies from all over the country, all over the world, literally, traveling internationally to sell South Carolina and say you should put your facility here in the state because we have a great workforce, we have a great quality of life. Um, you're going to be able to get your product wherever you need to because of physical locations, all these great things about this state that a lot of people don't understand from a perception standpoint. But when you get into the reality of it, it was a pleasant surprise over and over and over and over again. And so being able to establish my own brand throughout the state, be able to learn and suck in just so much information from all these amazing people. Being in the car sometimes 4 or 5, 6 hours over the course of 3 to 5 days with CEO X, Y, and Z. You learn so much from them in their past. It was a unique experience, and it put me on a fast track to understand business, community, government on a way deeper level coming straight out the gate. So it was extremely important, and without that, one, intentionality in what I majored in, and then two, the belief in oneself to be able to adapt. And then three, the knowledge to understand not to be too quick to move to another place without sucking in all the information that you could and the opportunity that I had. Made me more rounded as an individual and as a professional. So um, all that to say, my experience from transitioning, it has all played off each other, and it's been this perpetual building without knowing all the time, but at least trusting in oneself, and it's done worked out pretty well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, what a cool opportunity. I mean, first off, I commend you for making the most of the school side of getting to play football. The fact that you did get that great degree from a great school obviously goes a long way. And I'm sure there's some athletes at that level that aren't realistic and that don't take the most out of that. So good work
Right.
on that.
I appreciate that.
I mean, it certainly sounds like you made the most of that project manager opportunity, and it was almost like going to another round of school. It seems like you got to learn so much and be exposed to so much.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly what it was. And some of the key lessons, there was one, standing my ground. There are some perception issues that you got to deal with being a 22-year-old male that was a student athlete, a football player. That some folks believe that this was gifted to you, and I understand that. But at the same time, being able to show your worth and why you're in the position and why the person that put you there believed in you that way. I took a lot of responsibility upon myself to prove that fact, and that helped out a lot. And that winner mentality from being in sports definitely kicked in there. But also, what I always say, the eye in the sky don't lie, and so you couldn't lie about what was on film. You had to be able to accept those failures as is and use those as teaching points to become better. And so I took that same approach to my opportunity at Department of Commerce. Of I knew I was going to be right, but I was going to ask a lot of quick questions. I was going to try to at least reflect my personality into the team too, without taking away from it. And I did. Like, folks weren't even eating together. Like, we wouldn't even go to the lunch, and it just blew my mind. Like, why we don't have like why we're not talking to each other in here. And within a year's time, folks would be going to lunch together. It was more conversation and asking about one's life, and there was a better camaraderie among the team. And I think I led the way in that in some aspects. And so all of it, it was just, again, being willing to proactively listen, which was the number one thing. Actively listening, and then be able to continue to direct projects in a direction that will ultimately say South Carolina is the best place for you. And me being a project manager, I am the first line of that reality to this company. And so all of that, it just helps you become a better professional. And as you learn, get more experience, that having that base mindset just made me more effective in, recognizing the potential and of the opportunity, and then two, being able to maximize on it. And the last thing I would say on this, because I think it's a great analogy for people to hear. Sometimes you're gonna find yourself in a position where your intangible salary supersedes the tangible salary that you have. And if you're looking at the law of demand, supply and demand, and finding that equilibrium of where you maximize the intangible salary and at the expense of your tangible salary coming in, where you find that equilibrium, you need to start looking at a new opportunity at that point. But as long as that intangible salary is higher than that tangible salary, there's room for growth. I'll say stick to it, stick to that path, and really maximize the intangible salary. And when those things start to intersect, then that's when you start looking for your other opportunities to grow in other places. And so for me, that 6 years mark hit, and then I transitioned to another thing.
Well, I appreciate that you brought that team building experience to that position despite being, quote, a rookie like you would be in sports.
Right,
You still brought those leadership skills and that team building, and it sounded like you added that level of camaraderie that the team needed to be even more successful.
right. And that's just self-belief and believe in yourself, right?
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And I really like that concept of intangible salary. Not everyone gets it. Not everyone's the type that would look at two financial tangible salaries and pick the lower one because the intangibles are more. But I think it's a really important perspective to have, and certainly when it comes to making societal impact.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if we're talking about societal impact, that's every day, right? Like, that's every day. And what I love about my country, what I love about my state, and you was a supporter of me, and I appreciate that. And what I made clear was I love my state and I love my country. And we try to measure that in so many different ways of someone's patriotism and try to take their voice and their love away from country because it's not exactly how you see it. And that's not what this country was built on. And so being able to speak to that from a platform of running for Congress and trying to reflect that in the way that we ran was very important to me. But the overall message was what? Let's get to work. And the work is on the individual level every single day. And so I just want people to understand the power that they have to make one single decision to help society move in a direction. But it can't just be talk, it has to be action. And so that has led me in all of my life. And so transition that, whether that was the monthly meeting that we had, where there was a group of 9 guys when we were 20, 23 years old that brought community leaders together and young professionals to have the conversation, whether that was Lead SC, where we had a youth conference with the Chamber of Commerce, whether that was serving on the Board of Visitors, serving on the Young Alumni Board, serving on the Association of Letterman Board, always seeking to take whatever skill set I had to give back to the community for the things that I cared about and was passionate about, and most importantly, grateful for their impact that they had in my life. And so that mindset of service has to be at the center of everything, and that's for everyone. And I think we miss that too often in society. And if we shift that, make that little bit of shift, man, I think we're a much better place because of it, and we're really living up to what this country calls us to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good perspective and one that I wish more people would absorb. And to go back to work experience, and you did those 6 years, the Department of Commerce. Eventually, you ran for Congress. What happened in between, and then we can dig into how your election went.
Yeah. So what happened between after I was at Commerce for 6 years, again, I had an opportunity with working with a client that was a company that was a client of mine, well, a company that was a project of mine, and the consultant that was helping them on it had just started a new crisis management firm of his own, separated from his partner, very respected in his own right in that field, and essentially offered me the opportunity to come up to DC and do some crisis management with him. Hell of an experience. I learned a ton, within a very short period of time. But, in that transition, there were some differences. And I'll just put it at that, because he was successful in his own right and he had an approach to his company that he wanted to take that wasn't necessarily in line with the way I wanted to operate as a professional. Nothing nefarious or anything inappropriate. Good stand-up man. It was just two different approaches. And, I recognized that and I made a decision for myself. No love lost. In fact, we communicate still regularly today. And I made that change, didn't know where I was going to go. So I was unemployed for about 2 months and got the Distinguished Alumni Award from the Dollar School of Business in that same window, and made Dean Bruce aware of just kind of my work situation. And DHG, Dixon Hughes Goodman, in that process, Trey Ackerman, who was a alumni of the university, was at the Distinguished Alumni Award, heard my background, and there was an opportunity within that consulting firm that fit that aligned with my skill sets. And we had a great conversation, and it worked really well. And about a month and a half later, I was down in Charlotte working for Dixon Hughes Goodman, heading up their negotiating incentives and economic development practice, responsible for the whole firm and getting this offering out and getting more people awareness to the value it created. And oftentimes the tip of the spear that allow us to cross sell for the other services that DHG offered. So great experience. Great accounting firm. When I made the decision to run for Congress, them being apolitical from their position of financial and fiduciary responsibility, we was able to work it out to allow me to go and run for office and make sure that they adhere to the responsibility they had as well. And extremely grateful for them being able to do that. And the experience I learned from a corporate level, from D&I to being able to handle big business, was invaluable, and made me prepared, I think better prepared for the challenge that was going to come from running a campaign. And so that experience I took from DHG gave me, and the support that I got from them allowed me to run for office, and then, ran for office in 2020, which was, we can have a whole 2-hour podcast on that, but love to answer any specific questions.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure we could talk about it for a while, and we'll just go into it a little bit here. But you mentioned a little bit in some of your comments earlier about bridging this divide and kind of bringing people together. And I think that relates to why you ran. But what drove you to run for Congress?
I was just looking at our society, and again, the departure from those principles that I was raised on, in Belton, South Carolina, 4,500 sleepy people. It's home of the Standpipe Festival, and we got gas tanks at the end, and Brown Avenue is where the rich people stay. Like that was home, but everybody still spoke to everyone. Everyone was at the game. We all cheered for the Belton Bears, and how about them Bears was the mentality. And if you was Janie Brown grandson, well, I know Janie Brown wouldn't allow you to do that, so I'm not going to allow you to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like that the simple things that is truly American that has drove us to the greatness that we were, and that we are. I just saw a departure from it to a level to where I felt called, to ensure that my voice and the people who believe like me was being heard. And that's the beauty of this country. You can do that, when you feel impassioned enough to do it. And that's what really led to me making that decision. And it was just clear as day to me. I was sitting at my desk and I was listening to, the news and a particular incident. And I don't even want to go political because it doesn't matter at this point. Was said, well, Mo, what you going to do about that? And it was run for Congress. That's what if I was 2 years old, I would have ran for president. Wouldn't have had a shot in hell. But, I would have did it because the point was more important than the position. You know what I'm saying? It was more important than the position, because when you serve and you really want to work to fix a problem, those same consistent themes that you had in your life, you figured it out and you bring people together and you work towards it. Like that's what we do. So in recognition and all of that, that's what led me to ultimately decide to run for Congress and pull a team together and run a campaign that reflected those core values as well. So,
and it was a great campaign. I think it's probably obvious to the listeners that it didn't go your way, but for someone running for their first time to go to the level that you did and do as well as you did against an incumbent, I was thoroughly impressed and excited for you and your future by it.
Yeah, man, it's again just belief in self. And my granny always said, "No one encourage you, you encourage yourself." And that was her saying, and it was just her way of always having a self-belief in who you are, what you stand for, and carrying yourself that way. And that's what we tried to do in our campaign, and nothing more and nothing less. And if that was enough for the people of the 5th District, then so be it. If it wasn't, then okay, I'm going home and I'm asleep. And that same ambition and that same drive, to want to help society for a positive doesn't go anywhere. You just pivot. You pivot again. And we pivoting right now. And I think the result of the campaign and success, and the endorsements that we got everyone from Senator Booker to Wilt Clyburn, to go down the list, Bakari Sellers, someone like Manny Powers Norrell that represented the I would say the essence of South Carolina, homegrown, girl that wanted to see what's best for her. Like all of that experience and people coming out the woodwork saying, hey, this is the first time I felt like somebody who understands me, that represents me, is running for office. I'm voting for the first time, Mo. Like all those little wins, man, makes it all worth it. I was in halls the other day, and a lady who has a nonprofit that deals with young at-risk students, they had to go look up a politician under the age of 40 and report back on them. And out of the 17, she said 13 of them came back to her saying me and saying that,
Wow.
so you telling me I can go and be an athlete, play football, go work hard, and then become the next Obama, become the next Mo Brown? Like, you know, that stuff wasn't lost on me because I know where I came from. And so to hear that actually to be what it is, at the end I said there's no losses, there's only lessons learned. Um,
And look
and
at those lives you changed in the process. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
that's
it's just
enough right there.
exactly. And so you just keep believing in that inner voice. And if you're of well intentions, not good intentions, because good can be can be subjective. Be of well intentions, like it's going to work out in the positive.
Well, I really appreciated the transparency and honesty that you brought forward with your campaign. Like you said, there aren't really a lot of politicians that do that these days. And I think that's why it resonated with so many. It's like he's a person like me that just believes in people and believes in the country and the values that it was brought up on, and getting rid of this division and bringing everybody together. And thank you for espousing those symbols, and really love what you were doing there. And curious, do you see yourself running for office again?
You know, I get that question asked a lot, and the answer is the same. If I feel led, I'll do it. I didn't do it the first time for recognition. I won't do it again. I won't do it another time for recognition. If I feel that the gift that I have is best served in public office at that time, I would definitely do it. But at the end of the day, the goal is always the same. It's for the progression of this country, the state, individuals again to see the light in themselves and to be a light into others. And as cheesy and as simple as it may sound, I don't think life is much deeper than that. And we go off the rails trying to make it more of that, seeking people validation, and not focusing enough on your individual light. So if you do that, it's going to guide you in the right way, and that may be running for office again. If not, then we'll keep plugging away and make an impact.
I'm excited to see where your story goes next. And now you're working on your project Process First. Would love for you to tell me a little more about what you're up to there.
Yeah, so I mean, going through the end of the process of losing the campaign, you have these different opportunities. You can go into the administration, and I had a lot of support from some individuals, and I won't say their names because I haven't asked them if I could, but they know who they are. And being able to go into the administration with the opportunity to work what I wanted to do. But there was another opportunity to go back to my consulting firm. Then there was another opportunity that I was interested in, and coming back to my university and helping in some capacity. Wrote up even some different job descriptions to ascertain and such. But for whatever it was, those 40 days and 40 nights, I was walking around my apartment, going to football at my couch, from the other side of the room, and hitting the wall more so than I should, and all that good stuff, just trying to kind of figure it out, man. I landed upon starting my own consulting firm, and really taking the vision of what I believe business should be, and effectuating, being an example of, how do you take strategy, connect dots, and start at the simple thing of value. How do you define value, and then how is that value communicated? How is it perceived? How is it received? And then ultimately, the stakeholders of that value, how do they get that return investment of such. And so starting there and creating your strategies, whether that's on the communication side, whether that's brand and culture, D&I, whether that's communications from a crisis management standpoint, how we consistently mitigating risk and creating and keeping value throughout our organizations or the objectives that we're trying to create. And I've been on that mission since February. Uh, Working from there, I've grown my firm to have a few partners who are SMEs in their own rights. They believe in the vision and what we're trying to accomplish here at PFC. And, I don't intend to advertise it. If you know, you kind of know. And we're going to help people who are serious about being helped. And if you want the perspectives that we can give, we're open for business. So we like to ask, what's keeping you up at night? And from there, we can determine if we can help. And if we can't, then we can probably find somebody that can. So that's PFC in a nutshell, and I'm really proud of what we've been able to do so far.
I like that question that you ask, what keeps you up at night? I think business and organizational leaders probably don't get asked that enough. And that's certainly where their biggest stresses tend to lie. And to have somebody that's willing to tackle those things head on, I'm sure is incredibly valuable for these individuals and these companies. One thing I saw that you described is teaching teams how to win.
Right.
So I'm sure some of that came from football, but talk about how you learned how to win and how you teach how to win.
Yeah. So I mean, winning this again, you have to understand what the value is, and winning is great, right? Winning is great, but just going to the name of my company, winning comes at the conclusion of a process. And so establishing processes that ensures winning, right? That ensures, a better way to put it, that ensures predictable outputs. That's what's going to allow a person to win. And then once you get used to the discipline of it all, the waking up in the morning, having to go and run, having to take a quick shower, having to change clothes, go to class, having to go to class, be attentive, and absorb as much information that you can, because when you really have your downtime, you really ain't trying to be studying. You'd rather be doing some other stuff. You don't get that much. And so being attentive, focus in those classes to absorb that information that you're given. Pivoting, going back to workout, get the workout in, making sure that you're maximizing that, eating right, that you can go in and keep your energy level up, finishing that, going back to class, then coming back to film, and going to film, going to practice, finishing up at night, got to go to study hall. Study hall, if you got a significant other, you want to spend some time with them or just chill out. Repeat, 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 repeat. But the reward at the end of it, you put all this work in for these 11, 12, 13, 14 weekends out of the year that really only boils down into about 12 minutes of actual playing time. And that's as a total. And so your individual play is only about 5 minutes, 6 minutes, depending on how you're playing. All that commitment just to win. And so understanding that winning requires discipline, determination, and dedication, the 3Ds that I learned in high school on a consistent basis, that's the hardest part. That's what people don't realize. They want the end result without going through the process. And so putting the process first and getting people to be able to communicate that in the terms that make sense for what they're trying to achieve, that's what we do here in this company. And that's how we teach winning. That's how we look at deals and say, all right, if I'm on the other side of this, what do I need to hear in order for me to buy into what I'm being told? And that's congruent objective. So all that, man, is PFC. And that's how you really teach people to win. And that's how you continue to win on a consistent basis. That's measurable, that's correctable. And again, that leads to the direct value proposition that you're trying to create.
Well, I love the messages that you're pushing there and pushing people to kind of work together to get things done properly. And how can it be tough with certain clients? Are there clients that aren't dedicated to making the necessary change? And, what do you do in those instances?
I've had people hear that message and say, "That's amazing, though. That's exactly what we need." Understood. They've given me what keeps them up at night, giving my team what keeps them up at night. And we put a proposal together that reflects here's the process. And more often than not, the follow up has been not there versus there from the other end. And it's just like, wow, where's that disconnect is at? And a lot of it comes again, people don't like the light shined on them. And so by shining that light on what's missing, the gaps is a lot of people take that as a personal attack um, of their performance. But it's not. And so breaking through, that mental block from acceptance, breaking through this young professional coming in here telling me as a seasoned professional that I'm wrong in business that I've been doing longer than he's been alive. That's a mental block that you got to get past. And so it has not been easy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, this has been literally the toughest thing I've done in my life. I'm talking financially, losing, taking a third of your salary home from the previous year to taking a third of your salary home from the year previous to that. But at the end of the day, if you're focused on the objective and understand that the universe works in a way that it's going to test if you believe in yourself, if you believe in what you're putting out, once it sees that you're committed, it's going to open itself to you. It's just a commitment going through it. So all of that leads back down to just the process, man. It's the process first. And once you understand that, you're gonna have a better chance of winning. And I understand that's where I'm at, even with the concept that I'm pushing to these clients, that they got to see it too. And when you get a few wins and they see the tangible results, the yes is going to come whole lot easier than it is right now. So um, it sucks at times, but it's also worth it. It's also worth it.
Well, it sounds like you're doing some great work, and as those wins start to pile up, not only will the yeses come, but I think you'll likely get to be selective in terms of who your clients are, and that'll allow you to make sure you're making the most impact you can.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And that's freedom. And we all searching for that. So
Yeah,
it's pretty neat to be able to walk that road towards it. And it's a path. And if you stay on it, though, I promise you, if you stay committed to yourself and committed to your vision, the universe, it'll unlock itself to you.
absolutely. I certainly believe that. And one thing that came up on one of our recent calls was mental health in big corporations and the tendency to ignore it, and some work that you're doing to push that more towards the forefront.
Yeah, it's from a mental health standpoint, it is it's it's literally in everything that we're doing right now and trying to figure out what it means and how do we deal with the soft tissue. It's easy to see somebody when they get hurt from a standpoint of a physical injury, but how do you measure that from a perspective of someone telling you how they feel? And then from a company standpoint, how do you measure that in a way that you are making sure you're meeting that need that doesn't cause additional effects that can go into the physical health of someone. So I think we're trying to find the right balance between finding that space for someone to feel comfortable, but at the same time being able to make sure that the objective of working is still intact, right? Like that yeah, you can have your time, but at the same time, your time can't be a detriment to what the workplace is. And so being able to communicate, the more conversations that we have around that, the better that we have systems in place that can pivot versus that is rigid. The better that is. And so I've been working with the app that is focusing directly on that, and looking at veterans and seeing how we can help them with their mental health challenges that they have currently. And we're in the process of doing some really good stuff. I'm not going into too much details other than that, but for as the mental health challenges that we have in the community and in our society, the behavioral health, it has to be a community approach. It has to be all of us looking at how do we speak to each other, how we're giving information out, particularly on the media side. Do we take, are we just looking for content and pushing it out without the proper context? And in the context we're pushing it out, what is the objective for that? Is it clicks, or is it to really inform? And I Gulliver's Travel, I read that in like sixth grade, I think. And the land of the Yahoos at the end, we was talking to the horse, Gulliver's talking to the horse, and I don't remember verbatim, but one of the horse, Gulliver was asking like, why didn't you tell the why don't you lie, essentially? Like, why do you just say everything as is? And the Yahoo response was, that's the whole point of communication. Like, it is to inform, to direct, not to inform, to deceive. And that just always resonated with me. And so in that, taking that approach to everything that we do, and how we're trying to push it out is of the utmost importance.
And that goes back to how you ran your campaign and how we don't have enough people in politics that have those types of feelings or are willing to live by them. So certainly thank you for standing for that.
Right, exactly, exactly. And I said run my company, but that's how we deal with mental health, and keeping that empathetic position. Understanding that everyone's truth is their truth. And so you got to be careful how you project what you think on someone else, because you don't want the same thing being done to you. And I think keeping that healthy balance and that proper perspective will allow us to get a whole lot more things done than we currently are, and then to really cut through some of the tensions that we have in the country that's so divisive, that just truly unnecessary. And Jeff, if I could say this, it's not no prolonged thing that needs to happen. It's not this magical solution that we keep trying to search for and hoping that somebody can lead us into. No, it's really a individual choice to say, I'm going to be good to people. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to judge folks all the time because they don't see it my way. Like, that is literally an individual choice, and we all make that. It changes literally on the dime. And so I hope folks understand it, and I push and I try to talk and say that as much as possible. Get over yourself, and,
Right.
and simplify things, man, and be empathetic.
Yeah. I mean, that's really powerful stuff. And hopefully more and more people will continue to lean that way. And yeah, it sounds like right now you're focused on growing process first and kind of seeing where the road takes you.
Mhm.
Are there any specific goals or dreams in mind for the future, or are you just sort of taking things as they come?
I've lost a lot. We didn't go into this, but I lost my in the last year and three and a half three and a half to 2 years. I've lost both of my aunts who helped raise me and my granny who helped raise me.
Mm.
Over the course of my life, I lost my father. I lost my brother that was 2 years younger than me. Lost my uncle. I lost a friend to suicide. Two teammates to suicide. Um, and through all of that, figuring out how to process that. One thing comes abundantly clear, that you don't have any control over this thing called life, and it really doesn't give a f of what your plans are. And so that understanding allows me to kind of move with intentionality that falls into those basic core values. But again, always being able in that position to pivot as life comes to me. So right now, the focus is growing PFC, being a world class, literally a world class consulting firm, in impacting the community and offering opportunities for people to grow their career, through the efforts that we make. That is the goal right now, and doing that really well. And off of that, staying dedicated to family, making sure that they're healthy and healthy and happy as much as possible, and into that same dedication to friends. And so, that's where I'm currently at, and living in that peace, and also living in that initiative. So those are blends of where I'm at right now.
I'm sorry to hear of all the loss that you've experienced, and I am highly confident that those individuals would be really proud, though, of the way that you've taken it and turned it into motivation and to making the most of the time that you do get.
Yeah, man. I do it for them. I keep them. I rap. That's one of my hobbies. I do that. Like, I got music that I got like 30 songs. I may put out an album at the end of the year just cause, uh,
Awesome.
it's don't hold me to it, but I definitely got a lot of music. But at the same time, in my music, I show so much appreciation and dedication to them, because I'm not who I am without them, and you can't lose those folks. And at the end of the day, I've learned this: they deserve every tear they want from me, because people mean something to you. It's okay to miss their presence, miss their guidance, miss their essence, and be have sorrow for them not being there. But at the same time, the same folks, if they were here, would kick you in your ass if you use them as an excuse, not to be the best version of yourself. And that's what always picks you back up, and you keep running forward to put a smile on their face wherever they are.
For sure. And it's good to hear that you're channeling some of that into creativity. I won't put you on the spot and ask you to rap here, but I'm sure the listeners would love to hear it at some point.
For sure, for sure. Maybe what I do is send you a little something that we can add in the podcast.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to me, it's pretty clear that your work has positively affected quite a few people, and that you're just a light in this world for so many. And I think it's awesome what you've been up to. And is there a story, though, of when you saw how your work could really affect change, or any kind of epiphany moment?
Yeah, actually, if I had to point to one single moment, it's a couple moments, but I'll point to two, and I'll do them quickly. The first one being, I was probably in 7th or 8th grade, and I was complaining about a workout. It's funny, both of them was track workouts. That was significant. Um, and my coach Ashley, he called me over, and at that time I was still going by Mauricus more so than Mo. And he was like, Mauricus, come over here, son. And he's like, let me tell you something. You over here complaining about workout, but too much is given, much is required. That's what he said to me. And in that moment, I was like, wow, it really it hit me what he was saying. It was a very subtle way, but a very direct way of, you're too gifted to be complaining about your current situation. And because you have these gifts, you are required to step up and handle more than the person behind you. And that has set with me my entire life. If you go on my website, it's on there at the bottom of it at the end right now. So that was a moment to where I realized that I was set apart, and with that, came responsibility. The second time was, I ended up costing my team what I believe a state championship, because I let my anger get the best of me. I was a little hot head. I didn't cause problems, but when you push my buttons the right way, you know, it was bad. Like, it's almost like I blacked out, and what came out my mouth came out my mouth, and that caused me to get suspended for a track meet. Well, that so happened to be the next track meet was regionals, and in regionals, if you don't compete in regionals, you can't compete no more. Your season is completely over. And so we made it to state. We was ranked, one of the top teams in the country, in the state, 1 and 2, with Ridgeview, and we ended up losing that track meet by a point and a half. And my brother, he was on that team. He was a senior, and I just broke down in the middle of the field and just cried like a little baby, because I felt like my decision making, my anger popping off to allow somebody to get the best of me, put me in a situation that hurt my team, and thus we lost the opportunity to win a state track meet because I could have made up those points I had. And so that made me take responsibility of my actions from a different way and understand that when you do have these gifts, if it's getting taken away from the people who are depending on it, that matters and that could hurt other people for a long, 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 long time beyond that. And so, those two moments in my youth, I think really helped me focus to go on the path of where I was able to go to college and then college leading to all these other opportunities that I had.
Well, from the first story with your coach, I really appreciate your ability to take to heart what people say and think like your ability to truly listen is a gift. Think a lot of us growing up we were told a lot of things that go in one ear and out the other. And I love how you were able to really take that to heart and carry it with you.
Yeah, yeah,
And
those seed planters.
and then on the second one, with um, missing regionals and Uh, it sounded like at the time, given your reaction, that you were self-aware as to what got you there. And it's just another example of your sort of open-mindedness and self-awareness to be sharp enough to see and to take responsibility for it. But also know that, you were a kid and I think that it was part of growing up.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I take those moments. I won't change them. Again, those lessons not lost. It's a lesson learned, and you only lose when you continue to try not pass that test. And um, when I talk to folks, I often say the universe doesn't let you pass to the next level until you complete that level. And just like on that game, you can die 1,000 times,
Yeah.
but until you find the right, equation to get past that level, that game gives you the same test over and over and over and over again. And that's how the universe works. And, having that understanding and looking for when I see repetitive things that pop up in my face, say, okay, what am I missing? I'm missing something here. And having that
Yeah.
mentality, man, that self awareness, that self correction, it really allows for significant growth and exponential growth, honestly. So
Yeah.
it is a gift, and it's definitely one of my skills.
Are there any experiences from childhood that showed you the importance of giving back, whether it was someone giving to you or you giving to someone?
My whole life was a matter of giving back, giving themselves, giving their time, giving their effort, giving their finances, just so that I can get to the position that I am, without, again, as I said earlier, the burden of understanding your gifts so that you give it away. Um, I would not be here. So the gratitude that I take into everything that I do is at the appreciation of the givers in my life and seeing the real world examples of my mother who, did make $30,000 raising three boys in her household, but would go out her way to open her home for someone else or, give someone else a ride when we didn't have room or teach somebody else when, we didn't have much. But at the end of the day, um, we help each other out, we pick each other up is the mentality that I was always raised around. It went to my grandma, it went to my whole family, again, my whole community. That's what we represented. So giving back is not something that I look to do. It's something that I am because that's how I was raised. So it's
Yeah.
everything to me. It's everything to me.
Yeah, it's part of who you are, and I certainly appreciate that. You talked about your amazing supportive family and some great coaches you have along the way. Um, is there anyone in particular that you'd single out as a mentor?
Oh man, I got so many mentors. I
That's
really
great.
do. I have a ton of mentors, and some of them more formal than others, but life is always going to be about people that you can learn from. I say it all the time. You can learn from an ant if you look at it long enough, and keeping that mind open. But so much wisdom around you, and keeping a healthy perspective of yourself and your ego, and being willing to listen all the time, and finding those folks that align with where your direction is going, and they have done it and have the experience that can guide you into those paths. And the key is, those folks out there to tell you what to do. They're there to give you heads up, on certain situations as you make your decision through your path. And that's what I've always appreciated about the mentors that I've had in my life. And I got some amazing ones. I'm talking about, former governors to former appointees to former CEOs or current CEOs, executives on both sides. Like I got a lot of amazing people in my network. And I see all of them that I have a decent relationship with as mentor to a certain degree. And so, you got to have that backbone, that core that you can always go to, got your back. But as far as being a mentor and being a mentee, you should always seek those opportunities, and that's going to be forever in life.
Yeah, I think it's been a common theme throughout our discussion is listening. That's something that seems to have been really important for you. It's important for everyone, but something that you've really seized is just being open and listening to people and learning what you can from them. And I loved what you said. You can learn from an ant if you look at it long enough. It's a great representation. You can really learn from any and all situations if you are coming from the right perspective.
Exactly. And I'm glad, it's been great listening to you summarize my long-winded answers. um, and you're right though. It really just boils down to listening. And we heard that saying growing up all the time, God gave you two ears and one mouth for a reason. And it's a lot of wisdom in that, being able to shut up, being able to take what is given, and then being able to apply rather, and then also being able to throw out, because everything that's fed to you is not necessarily for you, and being able to take that coaching through the noise, right? What is the coach trying to tell me beyond him yelling and belittling me to a certain degree? And when you learn how to decipher all that, the substance from all the fluff, it's amazing what you can do and what you can grow from, and how you can grow, again, more expeditiously by doing that. And it's definitely a gift. So listen, people, listen, 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 and then go to work. So that's
I
all
love
that
that.
really is.
So I do have a couple more, but is there anything that we haven't covered that you think we're missing out on?
No, man, I think this has been a pretty natural flow. Honestly, I feel like this is the first legitimate interview I had, like, after the election. Like,
I'm honored.
yeah, like seriously, like going through this, it's been kind of therapeutic for me. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And one thing that I'm adding at the suggestion of some listeners is letting each guest ask a question of me. Is there anything that you want to ask me?
Oh man, that is a great question. It's so many different things because you have a very unique perspective of life. I mean, given your background, given the challenges that you've seen, as well as the perception of what the opportunities that you may have, right? And so, I'm curious to, what is that burning sensation for you that keeps pushing you towards, the goals that you have?
Really? I mean, it's that in essence, it's family. My dad is probably the person that was most influential in my life. He passed away in 2008, and his mantra was Tikkun Olam, repair the world in Hebrew. And that's a driver for me in everything I do and every decision that I make. And certainly there's things that I want for myself and my family, but I think you can get those things while also providing positive impact to the world. And so that's what drives me really, is to do honor to my father and to my grandparents that survived the Holocaust, and know that they did that for something, and to lead myself and my family, my wife, my son, to do positive things in their name, and just to try to make the world a better place.
Man, to repair the world. How you say that in Hebrew again? Excuse me.
Tikkun Olam.
Kumolam. That's amazing, man. And listening to that, it honored them, the name. Um, that's so important. And what was key and consistent through what I was talking about myself is again the respect and admiration that you have towards your lineage and the respect, the responsibility that comes along with it. And Spur used to say it all the time. You play for the name on the back of your chest, on the back first, and then the name across your chest second. Both of them equally important, but your name is what you have. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that us being from our spectrum of life are connecting in the way that we are now, given the belief that we can repair this world, that we don't have to be hateful, deceitful. This pie is big enough for all of us if we wanted it to be. So
Yeah.
it's dope, man. It's great to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great question. Thank you for asking. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention my mother, who continues to set an incredible example every day with her work to make the world a better place. And certainly fortunate to have had her in my life, my whole life, and hopefully for many more years to come.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know your mother. She is an amazing example for all. Just an extraordinary woman. And the work that she's done here in the state, around the country, life she's impacted. You know, it's amazing, man, and it's amazing to see her get up and continue to do it. So, I it leaves me encouraged. I know the people and the good-hearted people from all walks of life, no matter where you fall on the equilibrium, like it's good people all over, and there's more of us than it is not. I
Yeah.
truly believe
Yeah.
it.
And
So,
and that goes back to the name of the podcast. People are the answer. I mean, it's those good people that are the answer to the problems that we're trying to fix in the world. So there's a question I'm asking every guest, and you may have actually answered it as we were going through, but and I'll tell you what I think that answer was first. But if you could snap your fingers and fix one thing in the world, what would it be? And how do you think that change would reverberate? And to me, the answer that really came out of our conversation was changing how people think and being empathetic. But and obviously, if you could get people, everyone, to have empathy, it would go a really long way. And I don't mean to steal the win from your answer, but that's where my head was at.
yeah, no, I appreciate that because I think it goes hand in hand with my natural answer. That's like I said, it's tattooed on my chest. It's no poverty, no war. So if I could snap my finger, you know, the thought of somebody going hungry is, that's tough, man. That's tough, right? That's really tough given the ability to produce food in this country, in this world. There's a lot of folks out here that just doesn't have a simple put food in their mouth. And I think that's the basic level of survival. And when we conquer the basic level of survival, which is not having to worry about one's survival because there's adequate food, literally at the base minimum of it, food and water, our world instantly becomes better.
Yeah.
Hope becomes better, opportunity becomes greater. So if I could snap my finger, change one thing, I would try to change to make sure that people have food in their mouth.
I mean, that's something that could unlock potential of so many across the world. In my first episode, Alex Hodera gave a somewhat similar answer. Basically that if you have the opportunity to just be provided your basic needs, that opens up your brain to be able to focus on other things. And that it's a key to unlocking potential, and it's something that I hope we can come together and make a non-issue.
Yeah, and we can. All the wealth in this world that we have, and all the ability that we have in this world, we can do it. And it's one thing that I always kind of find funny. I saw this meme, and it made so much sense to me. It had this huge number, like let's say $100 trillion worth of debt, global debt of $100 trillion. And quick aside, just so people understand how much $1 trillion is, 11 seconds is, excuse me, 1 million second is 11 days. A billion seconds is 33 years. A trillion seconds is 33,000 plus years. 32,000 plus years. That's the magnitude of difference when we talking about trillions, right? So we have over 100 some trillion, take the number is $100 trillion of debt in the world. And it was at the top of it. And then it said, it's owed to who? And it blew my mind. It's like, right, we got all this debt in this world, but who is it really owed to? It's it's owed to, I guess, other humans. And so at the end of the day, how much of these situations are we creating, and then what are the opportunities for us to level set a base where we currently are with the respect of where we were, but with the understanding that it's not as important where we got to go. And I think if we can fix that equation,
Yeah.
we're gonna be all right.
It'd be really powerful. And I also thought that your explanation to give some sort of relatable mindset to a trillion of using time was fascinating.
Yeah,
That's so useful. So thank
I,
you.
I can't take credit for that. My when I used to have a podcast, we had the Insanity podcast. My co-host was Michael Caskey, who is a state representative now. He used that in one of our podcast examples. So that's his credit. That goes to him. Where as you received it, I received it too. I was like, bro, that's perfect. Like that.
Yeah.
You get that? Like, holy crap! Like that's a big difference. 11 days, 2 years. Like,
I'm sure after listening to this talk that there will be a lot of people endeared to you that didn't know about you before. How can people keep up with you, and are there ways to support your impact?
Mo Brown SC is my hashtags, or my handle. I guess it's the right word. Showing my age is my handle on Instagram and then on the Twitterverse. So you can follow me there. I usually putting up something for as being able to support me. If you're a company who's looking for strategy that falls in line with what was detailed today, feel free to reach out to me through my website, processfirstc.com. Process first, all spelled out, the letter C.com. And you can get to me there via email, and it get directly to me. So looking to impact people, help as much as possible. And for as helping me in my ability to make impact, as I stated through the whole night, start with yourself, be the best version of yourself, hold yourself accountable, hold yourself to a set of standards that, the old saying, do unto others as you have them do unto yourself. Like, that's real. And if we do that, we're all going to make the impact that's going to increase the ability for us to enjoy this place called Earth that is beautiful. It has a lot for us to explore, and let's focus on that versus the negativity.
Yeah, I love it. I always appreciate the positive outlook, and thanks for all the time and for sharing with us, and excited to share this awesome conversation, and I look forward to our next talk.
Absolutely, man. I look forward to it, and we're gonna reverse roles. You're gonna make me get back in the other seat, and I'm gonna interview you on your podcast, and we're gonna have some fun with it. So it'll be good to be able to go through an interview again with you, man.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right, cool.
And here's that rap sample that Mo promised.
Come on, take a trip down this country road. We're built different, crew residing home of the bold. To all my jillies, the party you live on in my soul. This is what I know, we about to explode. Ready, set, go. Ready, set, go, we about to explode. Ready, set, go. Ready, set, go, we about to explode.
That was pretty impressive and a lot of fun. Excited to see where he takes the rap element of his career. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of People Are the Answer. To find out more, go to peoplearetheanswer.com.